There are people all over this country who are waiting for the 5th of June and rooting for us. They think it's as important for them as it is for us. There's one man in this room who's made that difference, who has awakened the nation to the turmoil in the state of Wisconsin and the promise that we have based on the uprising here in the state of Wisconsin. I am proud to say that he's a friend and a co-founder of Fighting Bob Fest, and he's always here and always helps us. Everyone in the country knows John Nichols. Please welcome John Nichols.
All right. All right. All right. Man, a couple minutes ago, Ed Garvey opened up the side door here at the Northern Wisconsin Fairgrounds, and the wind blew in, as Malin Mitchell was speaking so eloquently, and the flag of Wisconsin blew down and hit the ground. Now, I know that at a Scott Walker event, that wouldn't mean much because they've already dragged our flag through the mud. But at an event where we honor Robert Marion Fighting Bob LaFollette, people from all over this room, you didn't see it out there if you're out there, they came running over to pick that flag up, and we put it up here front and center on this stage because we stand for the state of Wisconsin, and we will raise its flag high once more. That's right. Walker took it down. We're putting it back up. Now, this is not a partisan event. It's not a partisan event. I want to emphasize that. The great religious texts of Judaism, Islam, Christianity, Hinduism all teach us that there are some things that go beyond partisanship, beyond politics. There are sins. My Catholic forebears from Ireland taught us that there are even mortal sins. So this is not a partisan event. But I can tell you that as a 7th generation Wisconsinite, whose people came to this state 25 years before statehood came to be, as a 7th generation Wisconsinite, I will tell you that Scott Walker has sinned against the state of Wisconsin, and he will be recalled and removed for that sin. Now, I don't have the names of the ACLU mug contest winners, but I do want to note a couple things here. First off, I have never spoken at a Bob Fest event without recognizing the importance of what we do. People across this country asked me, said, how come Wisconsin kicked up like it did? They took away labor rights in other states. Mitch Daniels, who we learned from Scott Walker's video with the widow Hendricks. Mitch Daniels in Indiana, Scott Walker's hero, he wrote away labor rights with an executive order. Nobody kicked up. They've taken away so much from us across this country. How come Wisconsin kicked up the way it did? And I said, well, you folks in New York, you folks in Washington, you didn't notice. But for the last decade in the state of Wisconsin, We've been having Fighting Bob Fest events to remind people of where we came from. There are people across this state that know we're a progressive state, and when you attack those progressive values, they know to come like the people in Lexington and Concord. You run to the Capitol and you say, no, Scott Walker, you don't take away our rights. You don't take away our liberties. You don't take away our legacy. You don't take away who we are and tell us to accept it. We fight back. But there's a reason we fight back, brothers and sisters. Somebody's got to stand up. Somebody's got to stand in the wilderness when no one else will. And in 1997, oh, those distant days. Hell, we thought Tommy Thompson was a bad guy. Now we find out the right-wingers think he's a bad guy because he's so liberal. Think about that mind-warping concept. Tommy Thompson, too liberal for the Republican Party. I mean, who next? Mussolini? Now, back in 1997, they're saying, oh, you can't beat Tommy Thompson. He's a beloved figure. Tommy Thompson, he's so strong, nobody's going to run against him. They were saying, I swear they were saying it. They're saying, well, maybe we could just not run against him. Leave the ballot line open. Because that'll fool them. Then the Republicans won't come out and vote. They were literally talking about that was how demeaned, how diminished the Wisconsin Democratic Party was. Nobody serious was going to run against Tommy Thompson. And some of us said, well, if the qualification for this run is nobody serious, then it's a good idea for Ed Garvey to consider it. And Ed Garvey stepped up to make that race. He went across this state, north to south, east to west, county after county. He went with Barbara Lawton at his side, and he said, we do not have to be the feudal serfs of corporate capital. We can be the state of Robert M. La Follette. And he rebuilt the progressive movement in this state. Ed Garvey brought us back from the wilderness. Ladies and gentlemen, my governor of Wisconsin, now and forever, Ed Garvey. And I just want to tell you, until this week, I thought Ed Garvey had lost that race. Much work as was put into it, I thought he had been defeated. And then, after getting my certificate from the Scott Walker School of Statistical Analysis, I learned that it is possible to review different sets of data and come out with different results. And to my amazement, Ed Garvey was elected governor by a 70-30 margin and continues to serve. In fact, when you add the legacy of Ed Garvey's first 4 terms to the term we have added this year, he now has created more than 500,000 jobs. We are living in a time of progressive prosperity as never before known. Thank you, Ed Garvey. Folks, I've got bad news for Tommy Thompson, but it's good news for Wisconsin. Dividing the room in half, right down the middle, okay? Not a partisan event. One half, other half. Okay. Scott Walker. Recall. Scott Walker. Recall. Divide and conquer. Let's put it all together. recall Scott Walker. Look at that. You divide and conquer. It doesn't really work. You bring everybody together. It's a beautiful thing. So my people come up out of Owen, Wisconsin. Now, we only spent a couple hours there. But we learned that Owen is superior to Withy. And as Frank Nichols used to tell me, and of course Abbotsford is superior to Colby. These are very obscure Clark County jokes that will be hilarious to you when explained by your neighbors. But my dad was born in Owen, Wisconsin, not by choice, but by snow. His mom was heading in to Eau Claire because they had a hospital there. The train stopped at Owen because there was so much snow on the track, and my grandmother was feeling a little bit like something might be happening. So they took her off the train and they took her down to a cousin's house. I have a cousin who lives in every community in Wisconsin. It's very convenient. They took her down to a cousin's house. They put her in the front room, and that night she delivered my father, Harrison Wood Nichols. And he was born in 1927, on December 8th, 1927, weighing 2.3 pounds. 2.3 pounds, and they didn't have a physician in the town, but they had a wet nurse and a veterinarian. And they knew how to deal with a small animal born before its time. I'm not kidding, they got a shoe box, and they put cotton in that box, and then they cut a little hole in the top. They took a lamp down, and they heated that box. And my father spent the first 3 weeks of his life in Owen, Wisconsin, growing to the health that was sufficient to take him to the hospital in Eau Claire, because rural people, using what they had always known, were able to take a child who should have not made it and bring him through to strength. And when my father died last November, I told that story at his funeral, and he lived to be 80, almost 84 years old, because of the wisdom and the strength of people in small town Wisconsin who knew better than people in those capitals far away, who knew better than those people on Wall Street. We've got people in our small towns who know how to save lives, how to grow food, how to build things. And when they tell me, oh, Scott Walker, they love him in the rural areas, I say, you wait till those votes are counting. It's going to be the small towns of Wisconsin who knew better than the people on Wall Street and the people in Texas and the people in California. Wisconsin is going to rise up from the farms, from the small towns, and turn this man out. I was so proud to tell that story of my father. And then after I did, I had people coming up to me day after day, week after week, saying, oh yeah, my mom, they put her in the oven with some cotton around her. She grew to strength. There's a woman sitting down there going, yeah, that's what we did. And they said, oh yeah, my grandma, they put her in a little crate over. And I realized we've been saving lives forever. We don't even think anything of it. We don't think anything of it when we do good again and again and again. We don't ask anything for it. We don't want anything more than a reasonable citizen should want. We want a state government that chooses not to divide and conquer us, but to unite us. We want a state government that says, yeah, if you live in a small town, you can have as good a school as if you live in Madison, Wisconsin. We want to make sure that if somebody falls a little bit behind in our small towns, they can have the health care, they can have the sustenance, they can have the housing that they need. We don't want anything extra, but we want a fair break. We don't want to give it all up to the billionaires in New York and Washington. We want to keep a little of it here in Wisconsin. We want to keep our state. We don't want to give it up to the 1%. We want to keep it for our 99%. And you know, when we talk about these things, we excite people. We don't just excite people here in Wisconsin. We excite them across the nation. Yesterday I was in Chicago, Illinois. My apologies. I didn't didn't go down there to wine and dine with the elites. I went down there with the National Nurses Union. With National Nurses United, and we marched into Daly Plaza 5,000 strong. We filled that plaza to argue that it is time in America to create a Robin Hood tax that takes from the rich and gives to the poor. To tax the speculators on Wall Street and bring the money home to our communities. And as I looked out, the nurses are creative people, as I looked out, over 5,000 people wearing those green Robin Hood hats. And as my friend Tom Morello from Rage Against the Machine was playing his song, and they were jumping up and down in their Robin Hood hats calling for a financial transaction tax. It was such a beautiful, wonderful event, and they cheered. They were so loud, and they were so energetic. And then when I came up and spoke, I said, they'd introduced me, and I said, my name's John Nichols. I'm from Wisconsin. And you should have seen that crowd, because as loud as they cheered for economic and social justice, as loud as they cheered for peace and a functional and beautiful world, as loud as they cheered for taxing the rich, as loud as they cheered for all the goals that are so appropriate, when I mentioned I was from Wisconsin, the roar that went up from that crowd rocked those skyscrapers, because Wisconsin leads the nation today. I went last night to a church in Chicago. We preached a little about economics and social justice, about the message of the Nazarene, who despite the fact that Scott Walker is a preacher's son, I believe he may have missed some of those sections in Psalms which are rather specific about where the weight of the Christian faith may rest as regards rich and poor. So after I finished there, I was approached by a gentleman named Roger Cole. He is the leader of the anti-austerity, anti-militarism movement in Ireland. Good Catholic boy. He came up to me afterwards. He'd come for the anti-NATO demonstrations in Chicago, and he said, I really liked what I heard in your speech there. I want to give you a card here and some information on what you're doing. And I said, that's wonderful, brother. Thank you so much. And I said, I'm watching what's going on. You people in Ireland are kicking up. You're fighting back against austerity, against the lie that says we all must give up our small pittance so that the millionaire or the billionaire can have a little more. And he said, oh, forget about what we're doing in Ireland. He said, every night I go on the internet right before I go to sleep, and I check my bookmarks for Wisconsin. He said, I look at what's happening in Wisconsin, because in Ireland, as we fight against the brutal austerity agenda that is ripping apart our communities, ripping apart our schools, ripping apart our public services, taking down our unions, as we fight those struggles, as we prepare for a referendum, if you can believe this, on May 31st, the end of the month in Ireland, where they're going to vote on whether to maintain Scott Walker-style austerity or to reject it and to begin funding their public services, funding their schools. They're putting that to a vote. As they do all this, he said, I go to sleep every night, I check on Wisconsin, and if you don't mind, I don't know if you're a religious man, but I say a prayer every night that Wisconsin may win, because if Wisconsin wins, I know that we across this planet will win the great struggle for economic justice. Wisconsin will lead not a country, but a world. Well, I thought to myself, oh, geez, putting some pressure on me, brother. We're kind of modest people in Wisconsin. We don't expect to lead the world. But that's sort of how it's gotten to, brothers and sisters. We can't blow this thing. I hear people say, oh, are we a little behind in the polls? And I'm like, that's sort of, I guess that'd sort of be like the Iron Brigade getting ready to go into one of the great battles in the Civil War. It says, oh, do we have the right ammunition? With all due respect, when you've gone on to the field of battle, you don't whine about whether you had a good day or a bad day. You march forward until you have the day of victory. Jeez Louise. There's people in Ireland praying for us. How can we be defeated? But I want to explain a little of the politics here, because it's as much as I try to make you laugh. It's a little bit of political responsibility here, because I know we've become a bunch of fretting whiners. We're all like, oh, the Marquette poll came out. Ooh. You know, like as if anything good ever came out of Marquette. I say this as somebody who went to Marquette Law School, so I have a right to, please. But the Marquette poll came out. Let me take you back one second. I want you to understand the moment we're in, because this is important. Probably the only important thing I'll say. We got a presidential level of intensity here right now. People are hyped up and hot. I mean, everybody's put up a Scott Walker sign in a neighborhood of Madison. Has the same feeling as everybody who's put up a Tom Barrett sign in a neighborhood of Waukesha County. Your neighbors look at you weird. And then the next morning the sign's gone. And you know, this is an intense moment. I sort of like that. I like that we have a politics intense enough that you would steal your neighbor's sign. No, I'm not kidding. I mean, it's like you say, oh, wow, this really matters. I got it. It's not like choosing between, you know, I don't know, Bill Clinton and Bob Dole. I mean, really. And so this is like real, okay? So it's a big thing. And in presidential elections, they usually nominate both candidates around March or April. By March or April, you've identified who the candidates of the two parties are. Primaries are done. 7 months pass between when you know who the candidates are and when you have that general election. In the state of Wisconsin, it's a 1-month run. So we're collapsing 7 months into one. What that means is that every single day of this Wisconsin struggle, from May 8th to June 5th, is like a week in a presidential race. A week in our Wisconsin struggle is like almost 2 months in a presidential race. Everything is coming in. Everything is packing in. There is an intensity to what we are in. Each day, a week. Each week, 2 months. I don't think a Mitt Romney or a Barack Obama could handle this. This is an intensity of politics. And when you get into that, you are on an emotional roller coaster. You get freaked out. You get freaked out in the morning, you get freaked out at noon, you get freaked out in the afternoon, and that's not even if you're a Grateful Dead fan. And you are ripping and roaring with this thing. There's a new poll out, and I can't handle that new poll. Oh, whoa, Tom Barrett just gave a great show. Oh, that's good, I feel good. Malin Mitchell just came, I feel wonderful. Oh my gosh, Scott Walker just made up a whole new statistical summary of jobs. I feel really bad. I feel good about the jobs, I feel bad about that he's lying. It can be a little amazing. It can take you up and down. So let me tell you something about, if we pause for a second. If we pause for a second, we take a look at that Marquette poll that came out. I loved the Marquette poll. I adore the Marquette poll. I want to put that poll on the front page of every newspaper. I want to put that poll on TV, on radio. I want to broadcast that everywhere. Because that poll shows that Scott Walker has spent, by the best estimate as of today, that's our best estimate of today, $28 million, and his buddies, the Koch brothers, and all their allies, they've thrown in another $15 million. I'm not good with math, but at the Scott Walker School of Statistical Analysis, that teaches us that that's the better part of $50 million. Better part of $50 million spent, and that man can't get himself over 50%. He can't do it. $50 million, and he can't get over 50%. I love that fact. I adore that fact. They got him. He's hovering around 50. And the Walker people are going, see, oh, we did it. Because we have divided and conquered the state. We couldn't possibly win a big majority. If we get 50 plus 1, we're in. And that is something to be concerned about. I love that it's made all you people freak out. That's a wonderful thing. I love freaked out, anxious political people as an election approaches. Senator Vine, how would not you prefer that your supporters would be freaked out and anxious and energized? Yes, you would like that. It is unfortunate you didn't have quite enough on May 8th. So you want them energized, but then you also want them, maybe take a minute, look down inside that poll, because here's what I really like. That poll showed that Republicans, supporters of Scott Walker, are at the most intense level of energizing that has ever been recorded in a poll of a Wisconsin election. 92% of the people who say they are voting for Scott Walker say they are excited to go and do it. They are certainly voting. They are impassioned about it. 6 in 10 Walker supporters say that they have talked to somebody in the last week about voting for Walker. They are hyped up and ready to go. You should be conscious of that. That is the other side. They are hyped up and ready to go. But here's the interesting thing. Only 82% of supporters of Tom Barrett equal that level of energy, that level of excitement. You say to yourself, we must be losers. No. We've just come out of a primary fight. We've just come out of a very unfocused moment. Only 82% of people are focused in. When you ask them, are you going to go to the mat for Tom Barrett? That's what they say. Do you understand that if we turn the energy up over the next 2.5 weeks, if we simply do what we know how to do, those of us who marched first 50, then 100, then 1,000, then 10,000, then 20,000, then 50,000, then 80,000, then 100,000, then 180,000 on the Capitol in Madison, Wisconsin. If those of us who gathered first 100 signatures, then 1,000 signatures, then 100,000 signatures, then 1,000,000 signatures to recall and remove Scott Walker, if those of us who did that, built from a base and then to something remarkable that was transformative in the politics of the nation, if we do that once more over the next 2 weeks, if we turn our energy up, not merely to equal that of Scott Walker's supporters, but to prevail over Scott Walker's supporters, if we turn ourselves up to that level, brothers and sisters, we close the poll gap. But we don't just close the poll gap, because pollsters cannot poll those who don't usually vote. They don't count in the working mom who doesn't usually vote but is going to vote this time to defend her Badger care. They don't bring in the student who doesn't usually vote but is going to vote this time to get that funding back for technical schools. They don't poll the African Americans on the north side of Milwaukee who don't usually vote but who will vote this time because organized labor is in the streets saying, we will drive you to the polls. Brothers and sisters, when I look at that poll, I see bad news for Scott Walker. I see great news for Wisconsin. And I want to tell you one final element here, because I know you say, because we hate optimists, right? We despise optimism. Optimists, you're an optimist. I don't believe you, right? We love a good cynic, right? Says, it's going to fail. There's no hope. Good, then I don't have to do anything, right? Because it's an optimist who tells you you can actually win. Because you know what an optimist tells you? It's your responsibility. You have it in your hands. You have it in your power to transform this nation, this world. Cynic will tell you, go home, don't worry. But you know what? Cynics are usually wrong. Jesse Jackson says it best. We have never, ever lost a fight that we decided to fight. That's the bottom line throughout history. And I will tell you something, because I know you say, maybe we could do it, maybe we could. This is one thing that I cover politics for a living. I'm serious about this stuff. Between the start of this recall fight and today, Scott Walker and his allies have spent the better part of $40 million. By the primary, they had spent more than $21 million. Tom Barrett had spent $1 million. So this is what we had done. We had marched out onto the field of battle. We had put ourselves in the middle of that field of battle. Scott Walker's people were on the heights. It was a lot like at the Battle of Lookout Mountain, when those Wisconsinites came, the other Union troops fell back. And the Wisconsinites came at the base of Lookout Mountain, General Grant himself had said, you're going to have to march. You got to get to the top of that mountain. We got to take it or we can never go south. We can never go into Georgia. We can never beat the original sin of slavery unless we take this mountain. The Pennsylvanians dropped back. The Ohioans dropped back. The Michiganders dropped back. The Illinoisans dropped back. But the Wisconsinites said, we will take that mountain. We will do that thing. Well, that's the situation. We're at that place. We were outspent 25-1. 25-1 going in to this fight. But tonight, when you go home, I'm not going to tell you that Forces of Light are going to equal the spending of Scott Walker and his supporters. But I'll tell you this. When you turn on your televisions tonight, you're going to see the advertising that went up last night and today from organized labor. And you're going to see this is the very first day since this fight has begun where our side will have parity on television. This is the first time where we will have resource parity in this fight. I'm serious, and you should applaud that. We're not going to win this fight on television, but when they are firing down from above day after day after day, and we don't have anything, when we're in that moment, when you start to have something coming from above on your side, when there starts to be criticism of Scott Walker, not just criticism of Tom Barrett, when there starts to be truth about Scott Walker, not just the lies about his job figures, when we start to say, why, Governor Walker, why are you the only governor in the history of Wisconsin to have a criminal defense fund? That's the moment when we start to transform the message debate in this fight. And when we get to that parity, when we've got a message parity, when we're starting to get some equal ground, that's when we go up. And those Wisconsinites, I hope you know the story. All the commanders of the Wisconsin units at Lookout Mountain, they were killed. They were shot down one after another by the Confederates. And then a young kid, barely into his 20s, Arthur MacArthur, reached down and grabbed the flag of Wisconsin. He was a corporal, and he went running up that hill. And the other Wisconsinites, kids from Clark County and Russ County and Pierce County, from La Crosse and Dane and Rock County, working class kids, farm boys, they said if that 20-year-old's going to run up the mountain, we're going to run up after him. And Arthur MacArthur got to the top of the mountain. He breached the Confederate line, and the Wisconsinites poured over that line and took that mountain. And it was at that point that the history of the Civil War was transformed and the day of slavery was done in this republic. That's what happens when Wisconsinites recognize we have it in our power to change the direction of this world. It's not the air power. That just gives us a chance. What makes it work is what we do on the ground. And what makes it work is going to happen on June 5th. You know, on June 5th, there's going to be a mom in Shorewood Hills who's going to get her minivan going. And she's going to drive into the inner city on the north side of Milwaukee. And she's going to pick up elderly grandmothers born in Mississippi and Alabama, some of them who don't even have their birth certificates. And she's going to take them to the polling places. And she's going to stand at their side. And she's going to say, don't you dare deny this woman her right to vote. She's got a right to vote, and I brought her here, and I'm going to stand with her until her ballot is cast. And there's going to be a paper worker up in Menasha, and he's going to shut his machine down that day, and he's going to get into his truck, and he's going to go and pick up a Hmong buddy, a friend of his who's Hmong and that family, and he's going to take them to the polling place, and he's going to make sure that they understand that ballot, that they know how to cast their ballot, because they're Americans, and they have a right to vote in this state of Wisconsin. And there's going to be a farmer out in Clark County who's going to go up to his National Farmers Union buddy just down the road. He's going to pull his tractor up and he's going to say, hey, brother, why don't you take an hour off? You go vote. I'll plow your fields while you're there. You don't have to miss out. I know it's high season, but I'm going to take care of it because this vote matters. We're going to win this when the farmers of Clark County and the small town people of rural Wisconsin go and join in with those people across this state. And on that day when that suburban mom drives in, when that factory worker from Menasha gets in his truck, when that farmer pulls up that country lane, we're going to send out a message that's going to go so far beyond Wisconsin. People across this country, people fighting to defend their schools, people fighting to defend their jobs, people fighting to defend their communities, they will say, we can do it. We can push back against this brutal austerity agenda. We can push back against the 1% on behalf of the 99%. We can transform this country because Wisconsin is, as Robert M. La Follette said it would always be, it is our beacon of democracy. And on June 5th, the state of Wisconsin looked at a governor who had attacked our unions, our public schools, and our public services, who had brought in the money of the Koch brothers and the billionaires across this country, who had brought in all the power of Wall Street, all the power of the distant overlords. And that little state, led by suburban moms and African-American grandmothers, by factory workers and Hmong citizens, by farmers and farmers, that state recalled and removed Scott Walker! Solidarity, brothers and sisters! Solidarity! Solidarity! We will win! We will win! We will win! We will win! Solidarity!